Hello, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be continuing the series on what if Saitama, or One Punch Man, was in My Hero Academia. Now this is part 4, so if you haven't seen the previous parts, go check those out. The previous part will be in the description below. But without further ado, let's begin part 4. After the events at the USJ facility, events would turn out pretty similar, with all the other course students at UA flocking the classroom. At the time in which the sports festival was set to schedule, we would still see the declarations of war from everyone and the confidence grow within Deku. Saitama here leaves to use the washroom as he feels very sick from his breakfast. For the first event, the race, the events would play out like in the anime, with Deku coming in first. This is because Saitama is having stomach problems from his breakfast. Once he gets out there and feeling much better, Saitama notices that everyone is already around the minefield part of the race. Saitama puts on the jets and easily finishes in the top 30. Shoto, seeing how easy it was for Saitama, becomes furious with him. In the second event, Deku would still get the 1 million points and become very nervous like in canon. However, Uraraka, like in canon, walks up to him and asks if they can team up. Deku then, like in canon, scouts out Tokoyami for his defense and walks up to Saitama for his offense. He of course agrees, and the team gets ready. In this scenario, while the team tried their best, couldn't hold the 1 million points. At the end of the match, Deku was angry at himself as he believed he had failed his team. Uraraka and Tokoyami would go over to support Deku, and just as Deku looked at Saitama, he would notice that he had a handful of headbands. Deku asked where he had gotten them, and Saitama replied by telling the three that while they were battling, he would run off and grab some. The three shouted in pain, but were glad he did as the team had enough points to get into third place. Now it was time for the main event. Ojiro and the other people on Shinso's team still back out of the event, and Tetsu and Shiozaki are still admitted into the final round. The matchups are set, and the board shows the following. First match will be Deku vs Shinso, the second Shoto and Sero, the third Kaminari vs Shiozaki, the fourth Tenya vs Ashido, the fifth Saitama vs Ayame, the sixth Tetsu vs Kirishima, the seventh Yaoyorozu vs Tokoyami, and finally the eighth Bakugo vs Uraraka. Like in the anime, Ojiro still warns Deku about the quirk Shinso possesses, but still falls under it like in the anime. The fight pretty much happens the same, with Deku winning the match and seeing the past users of One for All. With the Shoto and Sero fight, Shoto would get lectured by his father and make the giant ice blast which froze Sero and made Shoto the victor. For the third fight, Kaminari would be very cocky like in canon, but get defeated pretty easily, making Shiozaki the winner. For the fourth match between Tenya and Ashido, Tenya is still very heavily damaged since he took Deku's headband, so Ashido is able to win the fight fairly easily. For the fifth match between Saitama and Ayame, Ayame is very scared of Saitama's strength, as he believes the story of Saitama punching a villain into tiny pieces. As Saitama is about to approach him, Ayame forfeits the match. Saitama just replies with a cool and walks off the stage. The next matchup between Kirishima and Tetsu would go the same way, with Kirishima winning. The same would also happen for the fight between Yaoyorozu and Tokoyami, as it was important for Yaoyorozu's character to lose in that fight and lower her confidence. The fight with Uraraka and Bakugo would also go the same, with Deku defending Uraraka's plan at the end and going to her waiting room to make sure she was alright. After their conversation, the second round would start, with the first match being Deku vs Shoto, the second Shiozaki vs Ashido, the third Saitama vs Kirishima, and lastly Bakugo vs Tokoyami. The first fight between Deku and Shoto would go the same as in canon. Before the match, Endeavor would pass Deku and explain essentially where Shoto was coming from, and then during the match, Deku would use the secret Takno Jutsu. At the end of the match, Deku would still lose and Shoto would use his flames. For the second fight between Ashido and Shiozaki, Ashido would win as all she has to do is put her acid on Shiozaki's vines and push her out of the ring. The third match between Saitama and Kirishima would motivate Kirishima a lot. Kirishima tells Saitama that while he's super strong, his hardening is better. Saitama replies with a simple okay. The match starts and Kirishima runs for Saitama. He lands a punch and the crowd roars. Kirishima continues to punch Saitama, and with a yawn, he launches Kirishima into the sky and way out of bounds, making Saitama the winner. For the last match between Bakugo and Tokoyami, liking the canon, Bakugo would win this match because Dark Shadow and Light don't really work well together, which results in Bakugo moving on. With that, the semifinals would start, with Shoto versus Ashido and Saitama versus Bakugo. The first match would be over fairly quickly as Shoto just freezes her in place like he did with Sero. For the second match between Saitama and Bakugo, everyone could tell that Bakugo was very angry. The bell rings and Bakugo starts off by saying he's going to ruin his weekend. This hit Saitama, not as an insult, but as a food for thought. Quite literally. He slowly began connecting the dots to the statement like usual. While Saitama was thinking, Bakugo began hitting Saitama around the stadium. Bakugo to the crowd looked like he was on the edge as he continued to pummel Saitama. Then Saitama finally connected the dots and realized that it was Friday. Saitama then realized that on Fridays there is a special for bananas, his favorite food. His face turned serious, and from this look, Bakugo's fire went out and gushes of wind hit the audience. Saitama brought his hand back in a punching movement and from about 10 feet threw it, sending Bakugo into the crowd. The audience roared as they watched Saitama run off the stage and back into the hall. On his way out of the building, Saitama was met by All Might. All Might asked where Saitama was going, and he simply replied with, "To the market." After a discussion on why he couldn't leave yet, the finals were set, Shoto versus Saitama. When both combatants got on the stage, Shoto told Saitama to use his full power. After Saitama simply replied with why, Shoto used some talk no jutsu on himself, proclaimed he needed to know that he was the best with his full power. Saitama agreed, and his serious face turned on. The bell rang, and when Shoto shot both his fire and ice, Saitama was already gone. Saitama was behind Shoto. Shoto quickly turned around, but once again Saitama was gone. Then, from right in front of him, Saitama prepared one of his serious punches. All Shoto could do was watch, as way too slow to react. Saitama landed his punch and sent Shoto flying, going through several walls of the stadium. The crowd watched as Saitama walked off the stage and asked Midnight if he could leave and go to the market. Midnight, still in shock, nodded her head and waved her flag, ending the final match. At the end of the day, Saitama had come in first, Shoto second, and Bakugo third, whom was furious at the other two. And that is going to do it for this episode. Thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe, like, all of that nonsense. My friend and I also have another channel. If you want to go check that out, then that'll also be in the description below. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. Subscribe and peace.